Hi and welcome to Indulge. This is Roma Laishram and I'm in conversation with Gary Mehigan, who's in India all over again. We can never seem to get enough of you,
Frequent
Gary.
visitor. The
Absolutely.
passport's got lots of stamps in it.
But we'd love to have you in India as many times as possible. We're absolutely in love with you. We've had great conversations with you in Indulge already, so I'm not going to ask you the same things all over again. But I'd like to know, why are you in Bangalore this time around?
Well, this time around, in association with Konosh. So I've been working with Konosh for 2 years now. I think in lockdown I did a couple of online masterclasses and it kind of flourished from there. So people don't know they're an online delivery platform, educational platform, special events platform. So they've not only do I come out with Konosh, but they bring lots of chefs out and actually export chefs back out of India too. So most recently they had Manish Mehrotra from Indian Accent over in Melbourne for the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival. So they're passionate foodies. So that's why I keep saying yes when they ask me if I'd like to do something. So I'm doing a series of 3 dinners, delivered one, which was in Delhi, a couple of masterclasses, second dinner or 2 dinners here in Bengaluru, and then off to Hyderabad. And I'm at the Asia Mall doing a demo for, I think, pre-sold, sold out, but maybe 200 people. I'm not sure. I'll find out when I get there.
We're not surprised that anything you do is sold out in India.
I normally say to people, "Why are you here?" So yeah, a bit of fun.
Where else do you think we'd be?
Exactly. So I've got a 7-course menu that we've paired with the Ardmore Legacy, which is a beautiful Speyside whiskey. Got a couple of nice cocktails with it. Mainly French. I brought a bit of French food this time. I explored some Southeast Asian flavors last time, which I love. But this time, I don't know. I just went, you know what? I want confit duck. I want rillettes of salmon. All this kind of fancy stuff. White asparagus. Yeah.
Let's just impress everyone to the point where they're blown away.
And took their socks off, basically.
Super.
Right.
Okay. We're always in constant awe with how much you know about Indian cuisine and how well traveled you are. There are very few chefs in India who could claim to kind of have the insight that you have into Indian cuisine. So where does this interest come from? How are you so obsessed with India? We love the obsession, but where does it come from?
It's I suppose because it's a polar opposite of Australia. Like it really is. I mean, Australia's got 27 million people. It's a bigger country than India. So in terms of landmass, much of it desert in the centre, but still fascinating. And I come here and it's just, I mean, my first visits here were, I have a different idea now than I did, say, 10 years ago. First visits here were overwhelming and slightly chaotic, and just the sheer number of people and what was happening, you know, you can't explain it to somebody that's not been here. But because I traveled so much now, I've shifted my position. I've read more about India. I've got a bit of a historical background. I read, Indian fiction and stuff like this. So now I kind of feel like I belong. There's this wonderful sense of humour that the Indians have that is very much like Australia. We also have a healthy kind of disregard for authority together, which I like.
Absolutely.
I like that healthy resistance to being told what to do. And I suppose now my fascination is more kind of discovering the diversity and the cultural diversity, the historical kind of complexity, so I find it more enchanting, more beguiling, more fascinating on a more of a, like we were talking about the Northeast when we were off camera, and I've been lucky enough to go to Nagaland, for example. I've been lucky enough to go to Leh Ladakh up into the Himalayas. I've been lucky enough to go to Tamil Nadu, and so you drop into an area and food's fascinating, people fascinating, all these, it's just this rich kind of soup of, humanity. And then I go back to Australia, it's completely opposite.
Wow.
A young history that we've obviously got an indigenous history that's 60 or more thousand years old, but a young kind of modern history that lacks that kind of vibrancy and community. I'm quite jealous of it in many ways.
But I think Australians generally are so much more experimentative when it comes to cuisine and food, because I think the little that we know about the food scene in Australia, we're always constantly, wowed by the fact that they're experimenting so much, trying so many new things.
But that's happening here now.
True.
Like all these wonderful young chefs that I often talk about in interviews, and there's many more out there, but I'm loving that energy. I think that's just that optimism of youth and the idea of looking out and, trying to develop yourself. I mean, so many Indian chefs have traveled, they've worked in some of the best restaurants in the world. They've come back and they've decided, hey, I want to cook in, Pratik Sadhu, for example, up in Nar, which is in Himachal Pradesh. And he wants to cook at the mountains. He wants food of the mountains. He wants to source everything from there. And people will travel for a unique food experience. So, things have changed since lockdown particularly, things have changed enormously here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard to keep up. It really is.
On that note, the last time we spoke to you was about your show on Nat Geo, and I remember asking you this question about what is that one thing while traveling across India that absolutely wowed you, something about food and culture, and you spoke about something in Kerala. It's been almost 6 months now since we last spoke. What's the new thing
What's
that's
the
got
new
you
thing?
excited?
Well, I was up in Punjab last week
Mm-hmm.
for Holla Mohalla, and my goodness, like digging into the history of, Guru Gobind Singh
Wow.
and, the Nihangs, that warrior tribe. That was fascinating. So, being part of this festival that's very, I'm trying to be politically correct about it, entrenched in kind of that 17th century idea of protection and battle,
Absolutely.
and but in a modern context of service, and not to the community but to mankind. And what I really enjoyed this time was the langars,
Yes, those
people,
wonderful meals.
it's
Yeah.
just so this sense of service and charity, if you like.
Did you get to cook anything in the kitchen?
I did. I had a stir or two, but come on, we're talking 500 liters of Kia. That's not my bag.
Crazy manpower.
But what I love about it is, you're in a Gurudwara and you're seating 1,500 people at a time, turning it over every 30 minutes. People sitting shoulder to shoulder. Doesn't matter caste, creed, religion, anything. Sharing that moment, that meal. Simple. Sabzi, Kia, chapati, maybe dal. But then giving something back.
Absolutely.
Could be a bag of rice. It could be washing up. It could be
taking
people's shoes. And so it really left quite a profound kind of impression where, I'll go back to Australia and, we're very ordered, very quiet, we all live in our own houses with our own fences and we rarely know our neighbours, and, I'll say in a week's time, last week I was sitting shoulder to shoulder with another, 1,500 people just in that moment. I miss it. So when I go back, I miss it. But then I miss Australia. So
lovely. We just love the fact that you can keep going back and forth. And as I said, you're always welcome to India. We love to have you here as many times as possible. My last question before we wrap up this quick interview is what next? Your fans in India are always waiting to see what you're doing new. I know you have something happening in Bangalore over the next few days, but what's next? When can we see you in the country again?
Certainly back in August. Matt and George will be back out. They were impressed last visit. I think there was a little hesitation, from both of them. I said, "Come on, let's do it," and they loved it. So we'd love to hit some second-tier cities like Lucknow, maybe Pune or Chennai, Chandigarh. Do something different. What else is happening? We along with Konosh, we're in search of India's ultimate home chef. We filmed it last year. So Konosh set about traveling to 20 different cities and towns in India, which is one hell of a task. But this is the passion of the people, and it's different from what I've done in the past in terms of MasterChef. It's really unearthing the home cook in their own place. We're not asking them to do fancy things with liquid nitrogen and the most complicated recipes exactly, the most complicated recipe you could ever imagine. But it's about unearthing little gems from little corners of the Indian universe and kind of bringing them together and say, cook it for us, tell us about it, tell us the story, search for the background. So we actually filmed that last year, and we're just about to kick off again, or Konosh is about to kick off again and do another great, what would you call it? It's like it's going to be another great collection of home cooks. And for Matt and George, when we filmed it, we ate some totally unexpected dishes, and I'm looking forward to more of it. I love that story of home. I love that story. I don't want any hyperbole around it. I don't want any, I want to feel it. If they're cooking something over the hearth, I remember in Nagaland, cooking silkworms over an open hearth, but it wasn't that. It was above it. It was all the fish wrapped in leaves, just curing and smoking above it, that caught my attention. I'm like, what's this here? So we want that. I want to feel that when I eat it. So that's happening. So, and I think we're involved in a number of festivals across the year. I think probably another 3 or 4 visits back to India before the year's out.
On that really exciting note, my last question, because I have to ask you this. Any restaurant, are you ever going to open a restaurant in India? And is there a book that we see coming sometime?
Well, I wrote, I actually wrote a book in lockdown, which was never released in India, which I'm really disappointed about. It was an absolute tome. There's 300 plus recipes in it. It's available online, but I think it actually costs more to ship it than it does to
Absolutely.
buy the book.
So you should do a launch.
So
in
yeah, I
India.
need to. I actually, if anybody's listening that's a printer, I'm happy to get it printed over here because it took a lot of work and a lot of recipe testing. And actually now, even my family, and prior to that, I'd find my wife looking at Matt Preston's cookbook. Now I find my daughter and wife looking at this most recent cookbook, and there's a couple of family favorites in there like dan dan noodles or grilled Korean chicken that we have regularly, and they cook it off my recipe. Thank goodness. It's taken years.
Fabulous.
A restaurant. Oh, I think maybe never say never. I love the idea of it, but I think I promised my wife because I've had 2 restaurants, catering company, and that time at the moment is over. I'm enjoying travel and projects and different things. I promised her that if it was another restaurant, it would be 100% commitment.
Super. But in India.
But if it's in India, you know what that means. I'd have to have a summer house in the mountains.
Doesn't sound
and
too bad.
A city
Doesn't sound too
apartment, somewhere like Bengaluru.
We can all hope for the best. We'd
Let's
love
see.
to have you in the country.
It needs a different passport for that.
Super. On that wonderful note, we come to the end of this conversation. Thank you so much for spending
Pleasure.
time with Indulge.
Yeah.
This has been Romal on Indulge. Have a great day.